And I'm wondering, can you explain a little bit about the difference between our sense of vision and our sense of smell?
So all of our senses are based on perceiving different forms of information that the outside world is giving us. And in vision, it's electromagnetic radiation, so that we see that as light, we see it as colors, we see it then as things. And the visual system actually takes a long time to fully develop within us. And in fact, it's not until we're about 3 years old that the full functioning of vision within the brain is fully established. Now, the sense of smell is actually kind of the reverse in terms of the speed at which it develops. So a fetus, by the time it's only 3 months old in the womb, has a fully functioning sense of smell and taste. That is to say that what a mother is consuming that gets into amniotic fluid, the fetus is actually also experiencing. So what mothers eat is in fact influencing the palatability of those foods for her infant after it's born. So for example, if a baby is born in one culture where there's a lot of spices or particular kinds of foods, that baby is actually going to have a predisposition towards those foods already because her mother ate those while she was pregnant with her. Versus if and the baby was born in a completely different environment where the mother consumed different foods and so forth. Now, this is part of why our olfactory learning actually even takes place before birth. So you could say, well, how come it is that that baby seemed to already like, that food, even though it hadn't really, formed an association? Well, it actually had formed an association even before it was born.
Yeah.
So the visual system is more complicated from a hardware perspective, like how in the brain everything is getting solidified and established. But once it's established, obviously we see things, we're always seeing potentially new things, but the software processing of it is actually simpler. There are only 3 different types of neural receptors that respond to visual stimuli. We have 3 for color, 1 for black and white, and everything else is then, sort of organized downstream. The area of the brain that's dedicated to processing vision is actually specifically dedicated to processing vision. It's the back of the brain over here, the occipital lobe, and there's different structures within it. Now, for the sense of smell, first of all, there are millions of different receptors. In terms of the number that we have, there's actually, from the point of view of the number of different types of receptors that are functional, that are detecting smells, it's about 400, but of course that's vastly more than 4. But it's also the case that it's ever so slightly different for every person, which is also another extremely different thing about the sense of smell and vision. In vision, except if you have a certain form of color blindness, we all ostensibly see the same colors in the world and the same shapes and so forth in the world. Whereas for the sense of smell, everyone actually has a unique nose. And what I mean by that is that the number and the specific type of receptors that are expressed in the noses of every single person is ever so slightly different. So those 400 different types of receptors, first of all, there's fluctuation in exactly what those are across different people. And also, very importantly, the number of repeats of specific versions of those receptors that are expressed in any different person. And what that really translates to is intensity. So if you have more copies of a certain type of receptor, you're going to perceive a smell as being stronger than someone who has fewer copies. And also there are people that have no copies for a particular type of receptor, and they have quote unquote normal sense of smell, but with a specific anosmia. And in fact, there's a very common specific anosmia to the chemical androstenone, which is produced if you're ever, like, for example, cooking pork. And people either smell this as a kind of a sweet or floral scent, or as an unpleasant kind of urine-like scent, or they can't smell it at all. But otherwise they have a totally normal sense of smell. And there's several other examples of these, what are referred to as specific anosmias. Even cilantro, which is a very sort of controversial scent in terms of some people love it, some people hate it. It turns out the people who hate it are actually missing the type of receptor that responds to the herbaceous, really sort of lovely green notes, and are only kind of getting the soapy aspects of it. So there's a lot of differentiation between the sense of vision and smell, which I could go on forever, but I think we could stop there.
Yeah.